The first time I saw him cry on set, I almost walked away. Not because I didn't care, but because standing there, wiping his tears, I realized that I was dangerously close to losing the only sense of control I had over my own heart. Liam, with his boyish charm and desperate dreams of stardom, had the kind of vulnerability that made people trip over their words and their moral boundaries, and I, somehow, was the one he leaned on. I met Liam during the chaotic frenzy of a Hollywood audition season. I was supposed to be his manager, his guide, the voice that steered him through contracts and camera angles. But the closer I got, the more I understood that managing Liam was like trying to hold water in my hand. She slipped through every plan I made, and yet, I found myself craving the moments when he laughed, when he frowned, when he let the real weight of life drop onto my shoulders. It started with small things. He would call me in the middle of the night, panic in his voice because an agent had canceled a meeting or a co-star had said something cruel. I would stay up, listen to him vent, and then calm him down, even though my own body ached from exhaustion. At first, it was purely professional, or so I told myself. But soon, I found myself inventing reasons to be near him during photo shoots, rehearsals, even casual lunch breaks. My hands, which should have held scripts and schedules, often found excuses to brush against his, linger on his shoulder, or straighten his collar with a tenderness that made my chest tighten. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of filming a tense scene, Liam collapsed into the couch of my apartment as if it were his personal refuge. He was shaking, exhausted, and emotionally drained. "I just can't do this sometimes," he admitted, voice breaking in a way that made my heart clamp painfully. I sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, and I wrapped an arm around him. "You're stronger than you think," I whispered, though inside, I wondered who I was fooling. He needed me, but did I need him? My heart refused to answer that question. Days turned into weeks, and our relationship became an unspoken balance of intimacy and restraint. I attended every premiere, every photo shoot, every awkward social mixer, always there, always supportive. And every time he smiled at me, a part of me wanted to cross that line I had never intended to cross. There was a magnetic pull, undeniable and dangerous, but I reminded myself that my heart belonged to no one. I was the anchor, not the lover. I could never let him see that the bond he relied on so heavily was something I craved too. The turning point came during a filming session in Los Angeles, where the skyline glimmered behind us as the golden hour stretched long and soft across the studio. Liam was on set, preparing for a pivotal scene, visibly tense. I watched from the sidelines, the camera capturing his every subtle emotion. He turned to me, anxiety in his eyes, and asked, "Do you think I can really do this?" I hesitated, because my honest answer teetered dangerously close to revelation. "I know you can," I said, forcing the warmth in my voice to sound like professional encouragement. He smiled, relief washing over him, and in that smile, I saw the unguarded hope that made my chest ache. Our relationship stayed in this delicate equilibrium until the night of the Hollywood Gala. Liam had been nominated for his breakout role, and the entire industry seemed to orbit around him. I watched him from across the room, handsome and radiant in his tuxedo, and realized how much I had sacrificed my own dreams, my own emotional safety Tito be his pillar. When he crossed the room toward me, champagne glass in hand, eyes sparkling with triumph and vulnerability, I understood that I was no longer just his support. I was a part of his world in ways that went beyond professional boundaries. He leaned in, whispering something that made me laugh despite the knot tightening in my chest. "I couldn't have done this without you." My heart beat erratically. Every fiber of my being wanted to confess, to pull him close and admit the truth I had buried for months. That I wanted more than to support him, that my heart had already claimed him in secret. But I stayed silent, smiled, and nodded, because some truths are too dangerous, too selfish to reveal. The story of Yusuf, Liam, and Muaz never meant to be romantic in the eyes of the world. Yet, behind closed doors, in the quiet moments between scripts and spotlight, there was a tenderness that no award, no fame, could ever validate. The night ended with laughter, subtle touches, and a bittersweet tension that hummed between us like electricity. I was his safety net, his confidant, his secret harbor. and I was still not his. At least not yet. But life has a way of unraveling even the most carefully kept distances. When a scandal threatened to dismantle Liam's career, I became his shield, taking hits for him that left me scarred emotionally. And during one stormy night in our shared penthouse apartment, he finally asked me the question that had haunted me. Do you ever want this to be more? I looked at him vulnerable, drenched in the soft glow of the city lights, and for the first time, the line between support and desire blurred. The answer hovered on my lips, a whisper of longing that could change everything. I held his gaze, tried to steady my racing heart, and said nothing, because some confessions are too fragile, too raw to survive the weight of words. But as we sat there, side by side, sharing a quiet intimacy in the silence, I knew that my heart was already dangerously, irrevocably entangled with his. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. The days that followed were a delicate dance of proximity and restraint, where every smile, every brush of hands, every shared laugh carried a world of unspoken emotion. Liam was still the brilliant young actor with a dream to conquer Hollywood, and I was still the unwavering anchor that kept him steady. Yet beneath the surface, there was a simmering awareness that the professional boundaries we clung to were beginning to erode. And with every passing moment, the question of whether I would ever truly surrender my heart to him lingered like a quiet storm, waiting for the perfect moment to break. Even in our most mundane interactions, reviewing scripts in the soft glow of my office, walking side by side through the bustling streets of Los Angeles, sharing takeout at midnight on a balcony overlooking the city lights, there was a gentle intimacy that neither of us named but both felt. The world outside saw only the polished success story, a rising star and his devoted manager. But behind closed doors, our shared glances, fleeting touches, and the weight of unspoken understanding created a private universe where we belonged entirely to each other, yet still apart. And in that tension, I discovered something profound. Loving someone truly and deeply did not always mean possession. Sometimes, it meant holding space for their dreams, sheltering their fears, and silently celebrating their victories even when my own heart ached in silence. Liam thrived under my care, unaware of the storm I contained for his sake. And I, in turn, found a quiet satisfaction in being the one he could lean on, the only person who could see through the carefully constructed masks and witness the raw, unguarded humanity beneath. The story of us, in its current form, was a paradox of intimacy and distance, affection and restraint. Each day brought new challenges, new triumphs, and new moments that tested the limits of professional decorum. And yet, through every trial and every triumph, the bond between Liam and me deepened in ways that no script, no contract, no spotlight could ever capture. It was a connection forged in trust, sustained by mutual reliance, and illuminated by the quiet recognition that sometimes, love need not be declared to be profoundly real. As the city slept beneath the neon glow and the distant hum of traffic, I realized that my heart, though not yet surrendered, had already chosen its path. And in the quiet spaces between ambition and vulnerability, laughter and tears, I discovered a truth I had long resisted. That being his unwavering support, even without the promise of reciprocated love, was a gift I could give freely. And perhaps in that gift we had already found our own version of happiness, fragile, unspoken but entirely ours. The bond we shared was a story of unacknowledged love, a testament to the power of care, and a quiet rebellion against the world's expectation that romance must always take center stage. Liam thrived in the spotlight, and I thrived in the knowledge that I was indispensable to his world, even if my role remained unspoken, unseen by the broader world. And in the private universe we had carved out together, amid the chaos of Hollywood dreams and the relentless pursuit of fame, we discovered a love that was both simple and profound. The love of being the anchor, the safe harbor, and the only unwavering support in a world that demanded so much. But as with all stories, the question lingered. How long could I maintain this delicate balance before the silent yearning in my chest became too loud to ignore? How long before the unspoken desire would demand recognition, and we would have to confront the reality of the bond we had nurtured in secret? For now, The answer remained suspended in the soft, intimate moments we shared, the quiet brush of hands, the comforting presence, the silent acknowledgement of each other's fears and dreams. And in those moments, I understood that sometimes, the most profound love stories are not the ones declared to the world, but the ones lived quietly, fiercely, and without expectation. The city lights flickered like distant stars as Liam leaned back against the couch, exhaustion and contentment mingling in his eyes. I watched him, the young actor who had unknowingly claimed a piece of my heart, and felt the weight of my own restraint. I was his support, his confidant, his silent guardian, and for now that was enough. The world outside could never comprehend the depth of our connection. But in the sanctuary we had created, it did not need to. We had each other, and in that fragile, unspoken bond, we had found something rare and enduring. A love that existed beyond declaration, beyond expectation, and beyond the limits of ordinary understanding. Our journey was far from over, and the story of Liam and me would continue to unfold in ways both predictable and surprising. But one thing was certain. In the quiet, tender moments where ambition, vulnerability, and trust converged, we had discovered a truth that transcended words. We had discovered the profound beauty of being there for someone, wholly and unconditionally, even when the heart remains cautiously guarded. And in that discovery, we found a love story that was ours alone, intimate, unspoken, and undeniably real. From the bustling streets of Los Angeles to the glittering stages of Hollywood, from the sleepless nights of worry to the fleeting moments of shared joy, our bond remained steadfast. I was the anchor, the safety net, the unwavering support. Liam was the dreamer, the rising star, the young actor whose brilliance illuminated the world around him. And together, in our private constellation of trust, laughter, and unspoken longing, we navigated the complexities of life, ambition, and the fragile, beautiful human heart. The city outside moved on, indifferent to our quiet story. But within the walls of our shared moments, within the subtle intimacy of every glance and touch, we had found a sanctuary, a space where love existed not as possession or expectation, but as presence, as care, as devotion. And in that sanctuary, we discovered that sometimes, the deepest, most enduring love is the one that never needs to be claimed, only given freely, fiercely, and without reservation. I watched Liam sleep that night, the soft rise and fall of his chest a reminder of the fragile beauty of youth and dreams. I was here, always, the only support he would ever truly need. And perhaps one day, when the timing was right, when the world had shifted just enough, the unspoken truths of our hearts would finally converge. But until then, I would remain by his side, unwavering, devoted, and quietly in love with the boy whose dreams had become my own secret obsession. Our story was not conventional, it was not dramatic in the way movies demanded. It was quiet, intense, and profoundly human. And as the first light of dawn crept over the city, I realized that this was enough. Enough to keep us grounded, enough to keep us connected, and enough to know that love, in its most patient and enduring form, does not always need to be declared, it only needs to exist, quietly, fiercely, and entirely between two hearts that understand each other in ways no one else ever could. The fragile line we walked blurred even further during the filming of his most challenging role, yet a character torn between loyalty and betrayal. A story that mirrored the tangled emotions between us more closely than either of us dared to admit. Every time Liam delivered a scene with raw, unfiltered emotion, I felt it like a physical blow. His anguish, joy, and longing seeped into me, making it impossible to maintain the professional distance I had so carefully constructed. I caught myself lingering in the background, pretending to adjust lighting or camera angles, all while drinking in the way his features twisted with emotion, the way his chest rose and fell with each labored breath. One particularly grueling night, after an emotionally draining scene where Liam's character confessed his forbidden love, he collapsed in my arms, his face wet with tears that weren't entirely part of the script. "I don't know how to keep going," he whispered, voice trembling. I held him tighter, heart hammering against my chest, struggling to maintain the cool detachment my job demanded. "Then lean on me," I murmured, though the words were as much a plea from my own soul as they were a comfort to him. It was moments like these that made the unspoken tension between us unbearable, charged, intimate, and impossible to categorize. The paparazzi often loomed nearby during shoots, snapping photos of the rising star in vulnerable moments, but they never saw the silent, almost sacred intimacy we shared off-camera. In the solitude of his trailer, or in quiet corners of the studio, Liam and I existed in a different universe, one where he could let his guard down, where I could be the anchor he so desperately needed, and where the world's judgment had no place. I learned the nuances of his fears, his childhood insecurities, the tiny habits that made him human, and in doing so, my heart betrayed me again and again, growing heavier with each passing day. We had dinners under dim restaurant lights, long drives through Los Angeles, and late-night conversations on rooftops overlooking the city skyline. Each moment carried an undertone of unspoken desire, the kind that makes casual touches feel electric. Once, as we laughed at some absurd joke, our fingers brushed. The brief contact ignited a jolt of warmth that traveled from my chest to my fingertips. Liam caught my gaze and held it, unafraid to let curiosity and longing flicker across his eyes. I quickly looked away, pretending to check my phone, but the memory of that touch lingered long after the laughter had faded. There were times when his vulnerability made me ache with a longing I refused to name. Like the night he called, frantic and panicked after receiving a scathing review from a critic who had misunderstood his performance. I drove through the quiet streets, the headlights reflecting off rain-slicked asphalt, and found him shivering on his balcony, hands gripping the railing. I pulled him into my coat, shielding him from both the cold and the scrutiny of the city. "You're stronger than they say," I murmured, feeling a lump form in my throat. He leaned into me, trusting, seeking warmth, and in that moment, I knew the boundaries we clung to were only illusions. The studio lights became less of a barrier and more of a witness to our growing connection. Directors would shout instructions, cameras would roll, but somewhere between takes, in stolen moments of quiet, Liam and I existed in a shared world of understanding and subtle intimacy. He would offer fleeting smiles when he caught me watching, and I would respond with reassuring glances, hands brushing against his in ways that seemed casual to anyone else. Our secret language, woven from shared glances, half-smiles, and subtle touches, was far more powerful than any dialogue on the page. But it wasn't all tenderness. There were nights when the tension erupted in frustration, both of us testing limits we had agreed, silently, to observe. I'd scold him for overextending himself, pretending the admonishment was about professionalism rather than my fear of losing him to exhaustion or heartbreak. He'd snap back, teasing or sarcastic, and beneath the banter lay a raw, unspoken acknowledgement of the line we hovered near but refused to cross. Each argument, each reconciliation, only drew us closer, reinforcing the intimacy we could never openly name. Then came the film's wrap party, a glittering celebration where Hollywood's elite mingled, glasses clinking, laughter echoing across the ornate ballroom. Liam, glowing with the success of a flawless performance, sought me out in the crowd. I felt my pulse quicken at the sight of him, tuxedo perfectly tailored, eyes bright with joy and unguarded emotion. We slipped away to a quieter corner, away from the cameras and the gossiping crowd, and for a brief moment, the world narrowed to the two of us. He laughed softly, leaning against me, and I allowed myself the briefest moment of indulgence, wanting to close the distance, to let the careful restraint fall away. "Do you ever wish things could just be simpler?" he asked, voice barely audible over the hum of celebration. I hesitated, feeling the weight of every unspoken word pressing down. "Sometimes," I admitted carefully. His gaze lingered, searching mine as if he were trying to decipher the emotions I had carefully hidden. The intensity of that look made my heart seize, and I realized that despite my resolve, despite my careful planning, the connection between us had grown beyond mere professional obligation. After the party, we walked through the quiet streets, neon signs flickering reflections in the puddles from a recent rain. Our steps were synchronized, shoulders brushing, hands occasionally grazing in fleeting, deliberate touches. The city around us was alive with noise, but in that cocoon of shared space, every laugh, every sigh, every glance carried weight. I realized that being his unwavering support was no longer just about protecting him from the world, it was also about the silent, powerful bond that tethered us together in ways neither of us fully acknowledged. The weeks following were a careful balancing act of professional commitment and personal proximity. We attended interviews, photo shoots, and press events, always presenting a polished front, while privately navigating the complexities of desire, restraint, and unspoken care. Liam began to lean on me more consciously, seeking advice not only about career choices but about life, fears, and insecurities. I offered guidance, comfort, and subtle affection, aware that each moment of closeness deepened the invisible threads binding us. One rainy evening, after a particularly exhausting day on set, Liam and I found ourselves alone in the studio, the city lights casting soft glows through the large windows. He sat on a crate, shivering slightly, and I draped my coat over his shoulders, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine. "Why are you always here?" he asked, a teasing lilt in his voice, though his eyes betrayed vulnerability. I shrugged, pretending casual detachment. "Someone has to make sure you don't implode," I replied, trying to infuse humor into my words to mask the ache in my chest. He leaned against me, a quiet sigh escaping, and I felt the magnetic pull between us intensify, an invisible force neither of us dared to name. Our private moments were becoming rarer, stolen between the demands of schedules and public scrutiny. Yet, every stolen glance, every gentle brush of hands, carried with it a universe of emotion. There were nights when I would wake from dreams of him, heart pounding, longing unfulfilled, only to find him already awake, scrolling on his phone, oblivious to the storm of feeling I contained for him. In those moments, I questioned my restraint, my dedication, my ability to maintain the line between support and desire. But I would not cross that line, not yet. Liam began to notice the subtle changes in our dynamic, the moments where my attentiveness lingered too long, the way my eyes followed him with a mixture of pride and something deeper. One night, under the dim lights of the penthouse, he looked at me with a seriousness that silenced all words. "Do you ever wish we weren't just this?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. My throat tightened. The question I had buried for so long hung between us like a fragile crystal, shimmering with possibility and danger. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Sometimes," I admitted, careful not to betray the depth of my own longing. He nodded, understanding the answer was both honest and incomplete. From that night forward, our interactions carried an added layer of tension, a quiet acknowledgement of the unspoken desires that pulsed beneath the surface. Every touch, every look, every shared silence became loaded with significance, each moment a test of patience, restraint, and courage. We moved through the days with careful choreography, balancing the demands of public appearances with the private world we had cultivated, a delicate dance that required vigilance, empathy, and unspoken trust. Even amid the whirlwind of Hollywood glitz and chaos, there were moments of sheer, unadulterated intimacy. Late-night walks along empty streets, whispered conversations in the dim glow of apartment lights, shared meals in near-empty diners. These moments, though fleeting, carried the weight of a lifetime of unspoken emotions. And in these small sanctuaries, Liam and I existed not as manager and actor, but as two souls intertwined by circumstance, care, and the magnetic pull of something neither of us fully named, yet both of us felt with every fiber of our being. The city of Los Angeles, with its relentless energy and neon glow, became both a backdrop and a participant in our story. Its streets bore witness to our quiet rebellions, our fleeting touches, our subtle affirmations of connection. Each corner, each alleyway, each hidden rooftop held memories of laughter, whispered confessions, and moments where time seemed to pause just for us. And in the sanctuary of these shared spaces, I found a profound understanding that love, even when unspoken and carefully restrained, could be both transformative and sustaining, a force that shaped lives without demanding recognition. Our bond continued to deepen, each day a delicate negotiation of proximity and distance, desire and discretion. Liam thrived under my unwavering support, his career ascending in ways that brought him joy, confidence, and recognition. And I thrived in the quiet knowledge that I was indispensable to him, that my presence, guidance, and care had become integral to his world. Yet, amidst all this, the question of Wiener if I would ever fully surrender my heart remained unanswered, a silent tension that lent every interaction a bittersweet poignancy. Even as the city pulsed with ambition, celebrity, and fleeting connections, our story remained grounded in authenticity, intimacy, and shared understanding. We had created a microcosm where vulnerability was safe, emotions could be expressed without judgment, and the bond between us transcended the superficial definitions of love, romance, or professional obligation. In this space, Liam and I discovered that some connections are too profound, too essential, and too transformative to be confined by conventional boundaries. The days, weeks, and months that followed were a testament to patience, subtlety, and enduring devotion. I remained his anchor, his confidant, his unwavering support, while secretly nurturing the quiet, fierce love that had taken root in my heart. And though the world might never see, never understand, and never acknowledge the depth of our connection, we both knew that it existed, real and unassailable. In the spaces between words, gestures, and glances, a love story written not in headlines or scripts, but in the silent, profound language of two hearts bound together in trust, care, and unspoken longing. The culmination of our journey arrived quietly, without fanfare, yet it carried a resonance that neither of us could have anticipated. The final week of filming was a blur of long hours, rewrites, and emotionally taxing scenes. Liam's performance was flawless, a testament to his dedication, talent, and the unwavering support I had offered day after day. But beneath the surface of our professional accomplishments, the true story was our own intricate dance of restraint, longing, and unspoken love. One evening, after the final take, we found ourselves alone on the empty set. The crew had already packed up, leaving behind only the echoes of cameras, footsteps, and muffled laughter. Liam slumped into a chair, exhaustion etched across his face, and I sat beside him without a word. For a long time, silence enveloped us, thick and comforting. Then he spoke, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, the weight of sincerity pressing on my chest. I swallowed hard, my fingers brushing against his as I placed the scripts on the table. "And you never had to?" I replied, a subtle truth hiding behind my words. The air between us crackled, a delicate tension that was both terrifying and intoxicating. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what it would mean to surrender to the emotions I had spent months suppressing. Liam turned toward me, eyes searching, unguarded, and I felt an irresistible pull. The line I had drawn, the boundary I had maintained, wavered like a candle flame in the wind. I needed to bridge that distance, to let the truth of my feelings be known. But words, fragile and insufficient, faltered on my lips. Instead, I reached out, gently resting a hand on his arm. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned slightly closer, as if he had been waiting for this silent admission. Our proximity was electric, each heartbeat a shared rhythm that spoke louder than any declaration. Liam's eyes softened, and a small, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. That smile held a promise, a question, and an acknowledgement of the bond we had nurtured in secrecy. Over the next few days, the unspoken understanding between us deepened. We navigated the final press conferences, interviews, and wrap parties with the practiced professionalism expected of us. Yet beneath every glance and touch was a private language of connection. Our bond was no longer just about support. It had become something richer, more profound, a love tempered by patience, trust, and the unrelenting intensity of shared experience. On the last night in Los Angeles, after the final premiere, Liam and I walked along the quiet pier under a canopy of stars. The Pacific Ocean stretched before us, waves lapping rhythmically against the shore, mirroring the steady thrum of my heart. "Do you think this could ever be more?" he asked, voice barely above the sound of the surf. I paused, considering the months of restraint, the nights spent comforting him, the countless moments where my heart had quietly betrayed me with longing. "Maybe," I admitted, my voice low, tentative yet sincere. He smiled, a mix of relief and hope, and took my hand in his. That simple gesture, the warmth of his fingers entwined with mine, was more intimate than any words could convey. The flight back to New York was quiet, comfortable, and full of a subtle, shared understanding. We spoke of trivial things, movies, upcoming projects, small frustrations, but every word was layered with meaning, every glance loaded with the unspoken. The city lights below blurred into a tapestry of possibilities, and I realized that, for the first time, I no longer feared the pull of my own heart. The bond we had built, forged in vulnerability, patience, and unspoken desire, had become unshakable. In the months that followed, our lives intertwined even further. Liam's career continued its meteoric rise, but he faced every challenge with a newfound confidence, buoyed by my unwavering presence. We celebrated his successes quietly, often in shared apartments or secluded restaurants, away from the glare of public scrutiny. Each victory was a testament not only to his talent but to the strength of our connection, the silent, steadfast devotion that had carried us through the storm of Hollywood's pressures. Our evenings became a tapestry of small rituals, preparing meals together, late-night drives, quiet moments of shared reflection. Each gesture, no matter how mundane, carried a depth of meaning. Liam would lean on me not just for guidance but for comfort, for intimacy, for the reassurance that we existed in a private world where vulnerability was safe. And I, in turn, discovered a joy that was quieter, subtler, yet infinitely more satisfying than any public accolade or professional achievement. Loving him, even in silence, had become an integral part of my existence. The turning point, subtle yet profound, came one autumn evening in Central Park. The leaves were ablaze with gold and crimson, and the air carried a crisp freshness that seemed to amplify every emotion. Liam and I walked along the tree-lined paths, our hands brushing occasionally, fingers seeking each other in fleeting contact. Finally, at a quiet bench overlooking the lake, he turned to me, eyes earnest and shimmering with unspoken emotion. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said softly. I met his gaze, feeling the swell of my own heart, and nodded. "Neither do I," I whispered, allowing the restraint I had held onto for months to dissolve. We leaned into each other, a gentle, lingering embrace that spoke volumes. In that moment, the weight of unspoken longing, of silent devotion, and of months of carefully maintained distance dissolved into a shared truth. We belonged to each other, in a way that was quiet yet undeniable. There were no dramatic confessions, no sweeping gestures, just the profound simplicity of two hearts finally acknowledging what had always been there. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of new intimacy and continued support. Liam and I navigated the complexities of public life, career ambitions, and personal dreams with a renewed understanding. Our love was no longer confined to stolen glances or subtle touches. It was a shared presence, a mutual commitment, and a quiet, enduring joy that radiated in the spaces between words, actions, and moments. Each day was both ordinary and extraordinary, a testament to the power of patience, trust, and the beauty of love that emerges slowly, deliberately, and profoundly. Looking back, I understood that our story had never been about grand declarations or public acknowledgement. It had always been about presence, being there for each other through fear, ambition, exhaustion, and vulnerability. Our love had been forged in quiet moments of care, in the unspoken support that sustained us, and in the patience that allowed our hearts to find each other without rushing, without demand. It was a love that required no stage, no applause, no recognition, only the mutual understanding and devotion that we shared. In the sanctuary of our private world, Liam and I discovered a rare and enduring truth: that love, at its most profound, is not always about possession or dramatic gestures, but about presence, trust, and unwavering support. Our connection had grown from a fragile, professional obligation into a bond that was tender, passionate, and resilient. And though the world outside may have seen only the polished facade of a rising star and his manager, we knew the deeper reality, the unspoken, quiet, and fiercely beautiful love that had grown between us, patiently, authentically, and irrevocably. As we continued forward, hand in hand, heart to heart, we carried with us the lessons of our journey. That love could be both subtle and transformative, that intimacy could exist without proclamation, and that the bonds forged in trust and care could withstand the pressures of ambition, fame, and expectation. And in this understanding, we found our own version of happiness, steady, enduring, and profoundly human. At last, I realized that being his support, his anchor, and his confidant had never been a limitation. It had been a gateway to a love that was patient, authentic, and eternal. And as Liam smiled at me in those quiet, unguarded moments, I understood. My heart had found its home, even if it had taken the long, careful path to get there. We had discovered a love story that was ours alone, rich with tenderness, loyalty, and the quiet joy of being together not for the world, but for each other. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.